I have an important video for you today, and I hope I don't mess it up. It's about what I consider now to be possibly a faked event, a staged news event that happened in New York City very recently at Elmhurst Hospital. Bear with me. I know this is a controversial topic, and the pandemic stuff has everybody very scared and paranoid, and just because I'm saying that this might have been a faked event does not mean that I am convinced that the virus itself isn't a real thing. It could very well be a real thing. In fact, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's a real flu. But I'm also pretty sure that they're using it to scare people to death and also for other agendas. And one of the agendas that I think thereafter, hadn't even thought of this till I read this article, is increasing the culling of people that are sick and that are elderly. I came across this Washington Post article, faced with a crush of patients, besieged New York City hospitals struggle with life or death decisions. This is from March 31st, just a couple of days ago. Last week, DNRs, or do not resuscitate policies for coronavirus patients who stop breathing or are in cardiac arrest, were being discussed as part of worst-case scenario planning. Ideas dismissed late last week by Deborah Birx, the White House coronavirus coordinator, saying, "There is no situation in the United States right now that warrants that kind of discussion." Over the past few days, however, as the city's death count topped 1,000, with 10,900 people hospitalized amid predictions of the peak of the crisis being still 2 weeks off, some hospitals and medical centers activated those protocols. At Elmhurst, according to a protocol that was communicated to staff on Saturday and again on Sunday and was shared with the Washington Post, doctors would be able to unilaterally designate coronavirus patients as DNR and/or DNI, do not intubate, which means they will not be eligible for a ventilator, even if it goes against the wishes of the patient or family. That's terrifying. I don't mean to scare you, because there's enough fear going around. But I think that that's something that needs to be figured into this whole thing. And if it's Elmhurst that's leading the charge on this whole doctors can unilaterally, hospitals can unilaterally decide to go against patient wishes and not even treat them and just let them die there. That's very, very serious. So we have to look at the circumstances that led to this. The circumstances that led to this are that a doctor, Colleen Smith, filmed video in Elmhurst, and then she collaborated with the New York Times to say that the hospitals are war zones and that physicians are falling ill and that they don't have the equipment that they need. And as a result, there are overflowing dead bodies everywhere. This is where that picture of the white truck backed up to the hospital, this is where this comes in, because they say that's a portable morgue. And by the way, more and more pictures of those sorts of trucks are starting to spring up online now, and they look very phony. There's one by ProPublica showing two men, not even in hazmat gear or anything, as you can see, loading a body, I guess, right directly from a truck into an expensive coffin. Just asking you, does that seem like a realistic situation? So let's investigate whether or not this story, published by the New York Times and created essentially by this one doctor, let's investigate whether or not that's true, because that is giving the news media and the globalists the excuse they need to start this do not resuscitate and do not intubate policy change that they want. By the way, that's a very good article by Washington Post, and inside of it, it does have doctors talking to the paper saying, I can't not try to save patients. I have to. That's my job. That's what I want to do. Lots of doctors say that. So just know that this is not coming from the physicians. This is coming from hospital administration. That's where it's coming from, just so you know. And this woman, Colleen Smith, is more interested in the hospital administration end of medicine than anything else. I started getting curious about that doctor when I saw Lady Warrenon post, "I just called this hospital. They checked twice and there is no Dr. Colleen Smith that works there." I wish I had a recording of those phone calls. That would be proof positive for you. However, I don't. And so I can't tell you whether or not this is true. I mean, I don't have a reason to distrust Lady Warrenon, but I can't prove it to you. In either case, it's not the foundation of my story. My story comes from myself and other people looking into the background of this doctor. Here's her LinkedIn page, Colleen Smith, and oddly, it doesn't say doctor. I don't know why it wouldn't. And her title is Associate Program Director, Site Director in the Greater New York City area. We can see where she went to school or where she worked. Emergency medicine physician and resuscitationista with interests in simulation, medical education, wellness in medicine, and faculty development. Here's some of her experience. It gets more interesting as you scroll down. Here we notice that she went to the New York University School of Medicine Sackler Institute of Graduate Biomedical Sciences, and she was a simulation fellow. Her skills and endorsements, medical simulation. Her languages, English and Russian. Okay, there's two things in there. Obviously, Russian just raises an eyebrow, but simulation. We talked a lot about the Event 201 pandemic planning, and if you notice, people around that are big into crisis communication. Their whole thing was controlling the message. And here we have a woman whose specialty is medical simulation, getting involved in a big way in the overarching political narrative of what's happening with COVID-19 corona patients in Elmhurst Hospital, New York. And it just makes me wonder about her video and about the coverage that came afterwards. Let's have a look at some of the video footage, just a short clip, because I don't want New York Times to pull this video for copyright.
We are right now scrambling to try to get a few additional ventilators or even CPAP machines. If we could get CPAP machines, we could free up ventilators for patients who need them. Five ventilators. Oh my God.
There's a lot of weird stuff in the video. I recommend you go watch the whole thing. But just in that little clip, you will notice that the hospitals denied that they were ever in a shortage. And even the New York Times says they keep getting more shipments of ventilators all the time. And most interesting to me is the fact that Colleen Smith, who is saying that this is basically an apocalypse at Elmhurst Hospital because of a lack of ventilators, who says she herself is a physician in the hospital, why is she standing there with her camera recording them instead of working with them? Why are they there in the first place? Why aren't their doctors scrambling to get their hands on them? And you might say, well, they might need to go through some kind of test procedure or cleaning before they're in use. Sure, but why is nobody doing that? Nobody's telling her to hurry up and take her picture. Nobody seems to be caring about these ventilators. All right. So that's the first odd part. And if you watch the video, she goes and she walks along the street and she purports to show a big lineup, a crush of patients waiting to get tested. And okay, just watch that part.
Now we're seeing 400 or more people a day.
At first, we were trying to isolate patients with cough and fever and be more careful around them, but we weren't necessarily being extra careful around all the other patients.
There was a lot of people there. She filmed that. But then, just a couple of days later, this was filmed.
Look on the YouTube, the CBS News, long lines of people trying to get tested. I don't see that. Here's those tents they had set up. This is what you saw in the news. Where's the line to the tents? Nobody's here on the tents. Rush of people. There's parked ambulances. No patients.
Where's all the people? And there's someone else went to the hospital as well. I took this yesterday, so that would have been March 28th. Elmhurst in Queens, COVID central, according to the news. Also walked in both the emergency entrance and the normal entrance, completely unchallenged, and 3 different elevators, very quiet, not much activity. I don't know what's going on. All right, let's look a little bit deeper into Colleen Smith. Here on usnewshealth.com, which I'd never heard of before, they do have a Dr. Colleen Smith, MD. If you look, it mentions medical simulation as a specialty. So it's her. It also says Elmhurst Hospital. But here it says that her New York State medical license was active only through 2018. So does that mean that her medical license is expired? It might, I don't know. I mean, remember on her LinkedIn, she doesn't call herself a doctor at this point. She's into simulation and doctor education. And when we go looking, we find that, yes, she is associated with this Society for Academic Emergency Medicine. This is a presentation she made that is uploaded onto this site. Colleen Smith, MD. A successful pre-brief. Here it says simulation, physical safety, confidentiality, no traps, video, scope of practice. Colleen Smith is also associated with Council of Residency Directors in Emergency Medicine, CORD. We see her name pop up in many different entries, more than this. And I was curious, I wanted to see if I could find any more information from this website. So I looked at their resources. I wanted this simulation library, but it's 404. It means they've removed the webpage. I'm not sure when they did that. It would be curious to know. Was it once people started looking at Colleen Smith and asking questions about her? Someone pointed out to me, this P.J. Moore, 1958, that the Twitter bio of Colleen Smith also doesn't say doctor, but it does say simulationista. Emergency medicine doc. She still got there, but no doctor. It's just not typical in my experience. No MD, no nothing after her name. So she's the one behind this. And all major television and media, print media, spread this story around uncritically. I went to see which Twitter accounts were boosting this story because usually you can find some good connections in the backgrounds of the people. And this was interesting. The top result boosting this story, aside from the New York Times itself, was this guy, Tim Hogan. New York Times has a video from a hospital in Elmhurst, Queens. It is horrifying. We had to get a refrigerated truck to store the bodies of patients who are dying. 5 ventilators. There's a mythical 100 ventilators out there that we haven't seen. This is March 25th, so on the day. And it has 7,600 or so retweets right now. Tim Hogan is communications director for Amy Klobuchar, Democrat candidate for to be leader of the Democrat Party. Of course, she dropped out, but So that's interesting. He's in communications business for one, and he's Democrat for another, and he's politically connected. Like, he works in the politics realm. The second, at the time that I looked, the second most popular amplification of that particular New York Times story was by this woman, Meredith Kelly. This video from Dr. Colleen Smith is heavy but worth watching. Takes real bravery to speak truth and shine light on serious lack of ventilators, masks, and support for docs and patients. People are dying 72 hours inside a New York City hospital battling coronavirus. When you look at Meredith Kelly, she's a partner at Sina Kozar Strategies. And she was for Senator Gillibrand and Senator Schumer. She was their spokeswoman and advisor. Sina Kozar Strategies, interesting. Here it is here. What we do, winning political communications and media, successful political strategies and planning for groups and organizations. Look at this. This cracks me up. Authenticity is everything. The fault line in politics today is not left versus right or red versus blue. It is real versus fake. Behind every campaign, every candidate, every cause is a story that strikes at the heart of the human experience. Isn't that fascinating? Authenticity is everything. It's a question of real versus fake. Let's look at a couple of selected outtakes from Colleen's video.
What's a little bit scary now is the patients that we're getting are much sicker. Many of the young people who are getting sick don't smoke. They're healthy. They have no comorbidities. They're just young, regular people between the ages of 30 and 50 who you would not expect. We started to realize that patients who were coming in with no fever but abdominal pain actually had findings on their x-rays and chest CTs that were consistent with this coronavirus, COVID-19. So someone in a car accident gets brought in, and we get a CT scan of them, and their lungs look like they have coronavirus.
Now, her facial expressions and eye movements kind of made her look like she wasn't being completely honest, in my opinion. But the other concerning part about this is when she talked about how patients coming in with abdominal pain or patients coming in because of a car accident would get screened and evaluated for coronavirus. And when you combine that with that Washington Post article about them saying they were going to unilaterally take the decision whether or not to resuscitate or even intubate certain patients based on their status with coronavirus, then that puts a whole new spin on this. They're overzealously looking for coronavirus at Elmhurst Hospital. Was that authentic? Did she come off as real or fake? What about these trucks? What about these trucks that don't have any refrigeration unit on them but apparently have dead bodies in them? What about this picture of the dead person getting put right from the truck into a $6,000 coffin without the guys wearing any protective equipment? Is that real or fake? Donald Trump has weighed in on Elmhurst Hospital directly. Here's what he said.
So I grew up in Queens, New York, and right next to a place called Elmhurst, Queens. And they have a hospital that's a very good hospital, Elmhurst Hospital, right? I've known it. I've known where it is. I can tell you the color on the outside, the size of the windows. I mean, I know it very well, right? I was near my community where I lived. And I've been watching that for the last week on television. Body bags all over in hallways. I've been watching them bring in trailer trucks, freezer trucks. They're freezer trucks, because they can't handle the bodies. There's so many of them. This is essentially in my community, in Queens, New York. I've seen things that I've never seen before. I mean, I've seen them, but I've seen them on television in faraway lands. I've never seen them in our country. Elmhurst Hospital, unbelievable people. I mean, when I see the trucks pull up, to take out bodies. And these are trucks that are as long as the Rose Garden. And they're pulling up to take out bodies, and you look inside and you see the black body bags. You say, what's in there? It's Elmhurst Hospital. Must be supplies. It's not supplies, it's people. I've never seen anything like it. So
I've heard he's been mentioning it quite a bit, Elmhurst Hospital. What's his take on it, really? Does he believe this stuff? Is he going to go along with whatever they want because of these videos? Actually, scratch that. Because of the one video by a woman who doesn't even seem to work there, whose expertise is in medical simulation, and who is being amplified by communications experts affiliated with the Democratic Party. I mean, don't forget, it's also helped out Andrew Cuomo. Andrew Cuomo has been holding daily press briefings about ventilators since March 24th. March 24th, we need ventilators and we need them now. March 25th, the New York Times, and associated with this Dr. Colleen Smith. People are dying. It's an apocalypse. We have morgue trucks. March 26th, Cuomo again, help us find ventilators. We need them so badly. On March 27th, Trump tweets, thousands of federal government delivered ventilators found in New York storage. New York must distribute now. Well, Chris Cuomo lost it. He said, what? What? That's not true. He got confronted by a reporter. I wish I knew who this reporter was, but I don't. Listen to what happened in the exchange.
Were there ventilators found in a storage facility or something that the president is claiming that there were ventilators found and that they need to be distributed? Is there any truth to that?
That is incorrect and grossly uninformed. The point is, we have ventilators in a stockpile and we didn't send them to the hospitals yet. Of course we didn't. That's the whole point. The hospitals don't need them yet. The hospitals aren't at their apex. The hospitals have enough ventilators today.
You see, again, nothing's making sense. Did he distribute the ventilators? When? If so, when? When did Colleen White or Smith make that video? And is Elmhurst okay or not? Obviously, Elmhurst is not okay, because if you remember from the start, the scariest part of this, on March 31st, the Washington Post tells us that faced with a crush of patients besieged, New York City hospitals struggle with life or death decisions. It obviously never slowed down, according to the official media. This hospital has been under so much pressure that they want to institute policies that would go against people's wishes to be resuscitated and to receive treatment. The death panels that we've used to hear about. This is another way for them to get them in place. Scare everybody. COVID-19 is so deadly that we don't want to ask doctors to put themselves at risk like that. Meanwhile, in the article, doctors are saying that it would go against their conscience. They can't do that. They must resuscitate and treat the patients. So what's going on here? I don't know. I just know that something doesn't sit right. People are going and proving that the hospitals, Elmhurst in particular, does not have a crush of patients. It doesn't. They're going inside and outside. Why do you think Colleen Smith's video here was fake? See, nobody was facing the camera almost at all. Almost nobody. How do we know that they weren't just homeless people paid to stand around for 10 or 15 minutes while she shot that footage? It's possible. Open up your mind, it's possible. Because honestly, if it wasn't for that one New York Times story and that one doctor making that documentary, would anybody be as panicked about New York as they currently are? I have a little happy news to end with, though, because karma works fast sometimes. This is from the 31st. Dr. Colleen Smith, the ER doctor who last week took us inside Queens's overstretched Elmhurst Hospital, has tested positive for the coronavirus. So far, she said, she's only had mild symptoms. Revisit her story and the struggle she described here. It's just about the same day that everybody started doing the Film Your Hospitals, or the Film Your Hospital got trending. Isn't that funny? And she's not the only one. They couldn't get Andrew Cuomo with the COVID diagnosis, but they did get his brother. Doesn't he look thrilled? Doesn't he look thrilled? Chris Cuomo of CNN tests positive with coronavirus. So let's review. Someone who calls herself a simulationista just happens to have perfect timing with a dramatic video that she alone made and got it published in conjunction with the power, the might, and the reach of the New York Times. And they used this in conjunction with the governor of New York to say Trump is bungling the issue of ventilators. And also, as we saw from the Washington Post article, sadly, it may be being used to try to drastically remove the rights of patients at some hospitals. We have someone saying that they called and the hospital denies that this woman works there at all. We know she took simulation training. We know she writes and teaches simulation training for medicine. So maybe she was a perfect person to set the stage and have it look real. Film Your Hospital begins trending, and citizen journalists of all kinds go and ask good questions and film the outsides of hospitals, proving Elmhurst did not have lineups. More than one person did this. And then boom, a couple days later, the suspect characters involved in this drama are diagnosed with coronavirus. Goes along with all the sketchy celebrities being diagnosed with coronavirus and all the politicians and world figures who are kind of accused of corruption. Down below the surface is just bubbling up now. They all seem to get tested positive for coronavirus. Something weird is going on here. Just before I wrap this up, I wanted to go back to this article for a second and show you how the news can lie to you right to your face. This is an image of the shelter that they built, the temporary hospital that they built in New York City. And as they claim they have to start letting people die because of the overflow and the hospitals struggling, look at the picture they're showing you. There's nobody in these beds. Right in front of your face. I don't know, you tell me. Are we crazy conspiracy theorists for asking these questions, these very important questions? Because if this is fake, if this was a PR stunt handled by major media, a doctor trained in medical simulation, and boosted by people who work for communications companies, and what do they call that again? Crisis communication companies. If it is, we need to expose it, because look at the road they're taking us down if we believe it. A lot of what's happening in the overall politics right now hinges on that story. That story is so important. Do you trust that woman? Do you trust the New York Times? Do you trust the people who are boosting it? Once again, thanks to everybody who contributed to this work and who continues every day to push for the truth, all the citizen journalists and YouTube creators and Twitter personalities who are digging and bringing truth as they find it. We're all kind of working together but not together on this effort to shine the light on a potential fake event as it's happening, so that we don't go and make bad decisions like we did after 9/11. And this time it affects many countries of the world. So also, if you are interested in the Film Your Hospital videos, a YouTube channel called Dana Ashley, she has put together a great video for sharing that shows back-to-back footage of what the mainstream media is showing you is happening at hospitals, right alongside, one after the other, the footage the citizen journalists are taking at the hospitals. So it's really a mind blower. It's really well done. I'll link to that in the description box as well as a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, everybody, I'm going to stop talking now. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you get my meaning. It's very important to expose this stuff as it's going on. I hope I did a good job. If you liked it, please leave me a thumbs up. Please leave me a comment down in the comment section. I love to read your comments. Also, subscribe. Subscribe if you have not. I'm also found on Twitter, and BitChute was my video backup, so I'll leave that information in the description box. If you would like to send a contribution to my work, or a card or a letter or something, I have a P.O. box which is available on my website, amazingpolly.net. On the contact page, you can look there. Or I do have my paypal.me account still up and running. Consider whether or not you can afford to make a donation right now while the world's all up in the air. I'm going to be here regardless, and I thank you once again for all your contributions that you have made and for your words of encouragement, your prayers, your thoughts, your stories, everything. It replenishes me. So thank you. Until next time, everybody, peace out.